In the seemingly endless frozen expanse of Russia, a land often cloaked in winter's icy grip, where snow blankets the vast wilderness, a new kind of ruler emerged. Ivan Vasilievich, a figure destined to reshape the destiny of a nation. Before him, grand princes ruled fractured lands, a patchwork of territories often vying for power and influence, their disunity weakening the whole. But Ivan, with a vision that transcended the petty squabbles of his predecessors, would unite them, forging a single, powerful Russia from the disparate pieces. At just 16, a mere youth by the standards of leadership, in 1547, he was crowned the first Tsar of all Russia, a momentous occasion marked by the splendor of the Russian Orthodox Church and the gleam of newly crafted crown jewels. A title echoing the Caesars, a deliberate invocation of imperial Rome, signaling a new era of centralized power and ambition for the Russian state. Ivan, deeply religious and convinced of his own destiny, saw himself as divinely chosen, a ruler appointed by God to lead his people. Fueled by this conviction, he embarked on a path of launching sweeping reforms and aggressively expanding his realm, pushing the borders of Russia outwards in all directions. Yet, beneath his ambition and his outward displays of piety, darkness brewed, a storm gathering on the horizon that would eventually consume him and his kingdom. Orphaned young, deprived of the guiding hand of loving parents, Ivan grew up amid the ruthless scheming and power plays of the boyars, the old aristocracy of Russia, Russia's powerful nobles, who saw the young Tsar as a pawn in their endless games of political maneuvering. Their constant betrayals and backstabbing planted deep mistrust in him, a seed of suspicion that would blossom into full-blown paranoia. This suspicion would haunt his reign, poisoning his mind and shaping his actions in ways that would forever alter the course of Russian history. The crown brought not just power and the trappings of royalty, but the crushing weight of history and the immense expectations of a nation yearning for stability and greatness. Ivan's early promise, the hope he inspired as a young and energetic leader, soon, tragically, gave way to crippling paranoia and unspeakable cruelty, transforming him into the very tyrant he sought to overcome. His reign would become a cautionary tale, a dark chapter in the annals of history, a stark reminder of how unchecked power and consuming fear can twist a nation's fate, leading it down a path of destruction and despair. The boyars, once powerful and influential figures in the Russian court, now faced a Tsar who demanded absolute loyalty, brooking no dissent and crushing any perceived opposition with ruthless efficiency. Russia, weary of internal strife and external threats, looked to Ivan for strength and stability, but found itself increasingly at the mercy of his growing suspicion and unpredictable fits of rage, living in constant fear of his wrath. The story of Ivan the Terrible is not just about one man's descent into madness and tyranny. It's about how absolute power, when combined with deep-seated insecurities, can corrupt even the most promising of leaders. How paranoia can warp one's perception of reality, turning friends into enemies and fueling acts of unimaginable cruelty, and how unchecked violence, once unleashed, can consume a nation, leaving behind a legacy of suffering and destruction. What happens when the protector, the one entrusted with the safety and well-being of the people, becomes the very source of terror they desperately seek to escape? What turns a leader into a tyrant? For Ivan, it was grief and suspicion. His beloved wife Anastasia died suddenly in 1560. Ivan was convinced the boyars had poisoned her. This loss shattered him, transforming his quiet mistrust into raging paranoia. Ivan saw conspiracies everywhere, every glance, every absence, a sign of treason. He trusted no one, not even his family. To root out imagined enemies, he created the Oprichnina, a state within a state, ruled by his will alone. Ivan seized the richest lands, leaving the rest to the old nobility. His black-clad enforcers, the Oprichniki, answered only to him. Ivan's childhood fears had grown into a monstrous machine of state terror. Picture black-robed horsemen, bearing a dog's head and a broom, symbols of sniffing out and sweeping away traitors. These were the Oprichniki, Ivan's personal agents of terror. Chosen for loyalty, not birth, they answered only to the Tsar. They seized land, arrested nobles, and executed without trial. Their arrival meant ruin, torture, confiscation, and death. The Oprichnina lasted 7 years, shattering the old nobility and replacing it with men loyal only to Ivan. Fear and mistrust spread everywhere. No one was safe. Neighbors betrayed neighbors, desperate to survive. Ivan's paranoia became a national epidemic. The Oprichniki symbols were more than ornaments. They marked the dawn of a new, terrifying era. Obedience was survival. Suspicion was a death sentence. Ivan's terror reshaped Russia's very soul. In Ivan's court, respect wasn't earned. It was demanded, and the price for failure was brutal. The boyars, proud nobles, now walked a tightrope, forced to flatter and submit or risk deadly consequences. Even small gestures mattered. Failing to remove one's hat before the Tsar was seen as open defiance. For Ivan, this was more than etiquette, it was a test of loyalty. Any perceived slight became a sign of treason. Ivan punished disrespect not with warnings, but with public, symbolic cruelty. He turned minor offenses into gruesome lessons, making examples of those who dared challenge his authority. In his court, etiquette could be as deadly as rebellion. Ivan's gaze was unforgiving and his punishments unforgettable. One infamous tale tells of foreign ambassadors who failed to remove their hats before Ivan. Offended, Ivan asked why. Their answer displeased him. Calmly, he ordered their hats nailed to their skulls. An act of calculated, symbolic cruelty. The punishment was agony and humiliation, turning a simple hat into a permanent mark of defiance. The message was clear. No insult, however small, would go unpunished. Ivan's power was absolute, extending to the very bodies of his subjects. The story of the nailed hats became legend, a chilling warning to all who entered his court. In Ivan's Russia, even etiquette could be fatal. Ivan's cruelty went far beyond symbolism. His dungeons became theaters of pain, where torture was both punishment and spectacle. Victims were stretched, burned, scalded, or impaled, each method designed for maximum suffering. Entire families were punished for a single accusation, ensuring terror spread through every household. Public executions were common, forcing nobles to witness the fate that awaited dissenters. Ivan believed fear was the surest path to control. Justice became a blood sport, and survival depended on absolute obedience. The Tsar's wrath was not just feared, it was a daily public reality. Under Ivan, terror was the law. Ivan the Terrible's reign is marked by numerous acts of brutality, but one stands out as particularly heinous. Ivan's most infamous atrocity was the devastating sack of Novgorod in 1570. This event would forever stain his legacy. Suspicious of the city's long-standing independence and its potential for dissent, Ivan, fueled by paranoia, accused its leaders and prominent citizens of treason against the crown. These accusations were likely baseless, born of Ivan's own insecurities. He and his dreaded Oprichniki, his personal army of enforcers, descended upon the unsuspecting city of Novgorod, sealing its gates, trapping the inhabitants, and unleashing a month-long massacre of unimaginable cruelty. No one was spared from the Oprichniki's wrath. Clergy, merchants, nobles, and their families all were considered enemies of the state in Ivan's eyes. They were rounded up without mercy, subjected to horrific torture to extract confessions, and then brutally executed. Thousands upon thousands were drowned in the icy waters of the frozen river Volkhov, burned alive in public squares, or hacked to death with axes and swords in the streets. The carnage was appalling. The city's accumulated treasures were systematically looted, its cultural heritage destroyed, and its spirit utterly broken. By the end of Ivan's rampage, Novgorod was utterly devastated, a shadow of its former self. Its population decimated by slaughter and starvation, its once thriving economy completely ruined. Tens of thousands of innocent people perished in this horrific event, their lives stolen by Ivan's madness, and the city's proud legacy of independence and prosperity was forever stained with the blood of its citizens. Ivan's deep-seated paranoia and unchecked power had erupted into a campaign of state-sponsored terror on an unprecedented scale, leaving a lasting scar on the Russian psyche. The massacre served as a brutal warning to all Russian lands. Any hint of defiance or opposition would be met with swift and merciless annihilation. Novgorod's destruction became a chilling symbol of Ivan's limitless cruelty and absolute power. His reign was now irrevocably defined by the pervasive atmosphere of blood, fear, and utter tyranny. How did Ivan earn the name the Terrible? In Russian, Grozny means fearsome or formidable, but history remembers his cruelty. His legacy was forged in the Oprichnina, in torture chambers, and in the blood of Novgorod. The story of the nailed hats became a symbol of his obsession with absolute power. Ivan built a nation but terrorized it into submission. His paranoia destroyed the very class needed for Russia's stability. Ivan's reign is a warning. Unchecked power and fear can consume both ruler and nation. He inspired awe, but ruled through terror. Ivan the Terrible's name endures, a legend written in blood. Ivan's death in 1584 marked not an end, but a beginning of a dark chapter in Russian history. His reign, characterized by both expansion and unimaginable brutality, left the country vulnerable and fractured. The carefully constructed foundations of the Tsardom, built on his iron will, began to crumble the moment he was gone. The power vacuum he created ushered in the time of troubles, a period of anarchy, famine, and foreign intervention. By systematically destroying the old nobility, the boyars, and leaving no clear, capable heir to inherit his vast domain, he plunged the nation into a devastating civil war, opening the doors to opportunistic foreign invasion from Poland and Sweden, each vying for control of the weakened Russian state. His model of absolute, divinely ordained power, where the Tsar was accountable to no one but God, became a blueprint, a dangerous precedent, for future autocrats who would wield unchecked authority with devastating consequences. Later rulers, from Peter the Great, who modernized Russia through ruthless force, to Stalin, who perfected the art of state terror, would echo and amplify his methods of state terror, using fear and oppression as tools of governance. Ivan's shadow stretches across centuries, a dark stain on the tapestry of Russian history, a ghostly precedent, a chilling reminder of the dangers of absolute power and ruthless control. He remains a figure of dark fascination, an enigma wrapped in layers of cruelty and paranoia. Brilliant in his strategic thinking, yet deranged in his actions, deeply pious in his religious devotion, yet utterly sadistic in his treatment of others. His story serves as a stark warning of the inherent dangers of unchecked power, the corrosive effects of paranoia, and the seductive allure of absolute authority. The tales of his legendary cruelty have become cautionary fables, whispered through generations as a reminder of the darkness that lurks within the human heart. Ivan built an empire, expanding Russia's borders through conquest and brutal force, but at the ultimate cost of its soul, leaving a legacy of fear and distrust that would haunt the nation for centuries to come. The terror he unleashed serves as a chilling reminder, a stark warning etched in the annals of history, that the monsters we fear most often sit on thrones, cloaked in the trappings of power and authority, convinced in their self-righteous delusion that their cruelty is not only justified but divinely ordained.